Transportation planning, not just in Washington, but really across the United States, was carried out over most of the past century, I would say according to sort of a cognitive dissonance between our actions and their impacts on the environment. Well, you can talk about transportation systems and the environment as if they were two separate things, but ultimately you can't separate elements of the built infrastructure from the ecosystems in which they exist and that they impact.
We've been building highways for a long time in the state of Washington without a lot of concern for the effect on fish. But we need new models, new paradigms, thinking about it radically differently. There should be a way to improve our built infrastructure, at the same time significantly improving our natural infrastructure.
The Big Quilcene River really needs to move outside of its existing channel in order to be healthy. Any river system really does. The constraint that the levees put on this river system and the constraint that the bridge puts on the system makes it so that the Big Quilcene River isn't able to access all of the floodplain that used to exist previous to the 1930s. You know, a lot of times infrastructure like this was built before we understood what salmon needed. We know that transportation infrastructure is not going to go away. People need to move around. We are taking the needs of transportation in this area and also dovetailing that with the habitat needs and making those two work together. We can have both great infrastructure that's safe for communities and have good wildlife habitat at the same time. It's just going to take an investment from the salmon recovery community, but also the transportation community to make sure that we're designing projects that have habitat for wildlife and fish in mind.
We're located at Frank's Landing here along the Nisqually River, and back in the 1960s and 70s, this is where the heart of the fishing wars took place. And so for us, this is a very special, sacred place. You know, growing up, we were always taught that we're related to the salmon, that he's our brother. For me, being on this river on Sundays was like going to church. You know, for us, this is our spirituality. Hearing those ducks right there, that's a part of our spirituality. But we can see this is not healthy.
As I-5 crosses the Nisqually estuary, it confines the Nisqually River and a small tributary into very narrow openings. The river is looking to move and relocate, and it's ready to jump channel and take out I-5 if we don't do something to relieve that pressure.
For a project like this, one of the first things that we need to do is to define the purpose and need of the project.
Hey, Chairman Frank.
That's important because that purpose and need shapes what alternatives are going to be considered and then ultimately what the preferred alternative will be based on. So enhancing mobility and connectivity, improving highway system resiliency, supporting economic vitality, but it also defined in the purpose enabling environmental restoration and ecosystem resiliency.
If we think about this project and what it's going to look like, elevate I-5 on a causeway from those wetlands for 2 miles all the way across so that it's open and free flowing underneath this elevated highway. We'll have Puget Sound under I-5 instead of being blocked by I-5. This project would have never happened if we didn't have partners that we've never had before speaking the same language. And part of that partnership was the Department of Transportation.
We are rethinking, reassessing long-held assumptions. And I think perhaps we will also establish new precedents through this work that we're doing. This is new ground that we're treading on. I think we can definitely have world-class transportation infrastructure and healthy, functioning ecosystems. It's not going to be easy, but when we don't adequately consider environmental impacts of our actions, there very well could be a time in the future that we will have to come back and correct whatever the consequence of our action was.
If we want to do this other places, and if we want to do this for the next 50 years, we're going to have to take on some really challenging issues, and we shouldn't be afraid of that. You got to start somewhere, and we're going to start it here and see if we can plant a seed that takes hold and changes things elsewhere.